Hello everyone, what's happening? You're here with me, Dave, on the Empire, and this week we're bringing you a video game review from Microsoft Studios and Undead Labs with the release of State of Decay 2. So, State of Decay 2 is a zombie survival horror game which pits you and up to 3 of your friends cooperatively against the zombie horde. Now, this game is a follow-on from an original 2013 release which was something of a cult classic. It was originally available on Steam, but since Microsoft has picked it up, it's now available on the Xbox Store and also on the Windows 10 platform. So if you go onto the Microsoft Store on that one, you can pick it up. Microsoft has taken the step of ensuring that this game is available on as many different platforms as it can be for a Microsoft exclusive game, and available in a bunch of different ways as well. For example, you can get this through the Xbox Game Pass, so that means that if you don't quite want to spend the full money up front on this game and you want to experience it, you can drop 15 New Zealand dollars and get a 1-month subscription to the Game Pass, and you will be able to access this and a whole bunch of other games besides. They've gone and made it as accessible as possible because the idea is that this game is about community and cooperative play and working with other people. We're going to get more into that in a wee while. But the premise of the game is simply that you and a friend at the start of the game, which is computer controlled, find yourselves against a zombie horde, and you meet up with a few other survivors depending on which character you select at the start of the game. And that character, this is how you start building a community. Community is kind of an important thing here, but the other thing that's really important to cover off early is that your character can die permanently in the game. So that means that, yeah, if they get taken over by the zombie horde, or if they get infected with the blood plague, which is a key part of the game's mechanics as well, then they can die, and you will lose all of the skills and all of the gear and all of the other stuff that you had for that character. So it is an interesting and tension-adding element to a zombie horror game. Now, as I mentioned, there's a number of different characters that you can start with. They've all got a little bit of a backstory, and each character starts with a unique set of starting attributes. Everything that you do adds to their experience. So, you know, as you go melee attacking zombies, you will build up your fighting skills. As you go around shooting zombies, you will build up your shooting skills. If you go sprinting away from zombies, you will build up your cardio and your fitness skills. Once you max out a particular stat, you get to progress it to the next level. So character evolution is quite an important part of it. One of the things that I quite enjoyed about the game was that if you're out and looting nearby buildings and looking for supplies and things to stay alive, your character becomes fatigued. And if your character becomes fatigued, it means that they have less stamina, they have less health, they become encumbered much more easily. So you have to be able to manage the character that you're playing, and you have to be quite open to the idea of changing characters in order to try and get the best out of the little community that you're building. Going to the community space, you obviously attract other survivors as you start to find a safe house, and you start to reinforce it, and you put in an infirmary and a workshop, and you start building these structures that will allow you to make the most of the things that you are finding in the nearby environment. As you go around doing that, people are naturally attracted to them, some friendly, some not, so you have options about how you go and sort of take care of those things, whether you want to go and help out people or whether you just want to arm yourself to the teeth and go around and shoot everything that moves. Both are entirely valid options for how you wish to progress. This feeds into another one of the sort of the core systems in the game, which is the idea of having influence within your community. Everything that you do, every action that you take, and everything that you gather adds to your standing, or one of your main character's standings within the community that you're building. And you can pick out a character to lead the community, not necessarily the character that you started with, but one of the playable characters. And as your character grows and develops and creates more sort of good things for the community, you know, better infirmaries, better workshops, places that people can heal and eat and do things that are good for them. That in turn allows your character to build out the idea of a legacy. That's a really cool mechanic, and one that I've not actually had a lot of time to explore. I'm not that far into the game yet, but the way that it's described is that ultimately a character's legacy has a large part to play in how a game of State of Decay 2 ends. So at the conclusion of a game, if your character is successful, they will have had an impact and they will have created a legacy, and you get a legacy card from that, which you can then use to start a new game of State of Decay 2 using one of the different main protagonists, but with a set of bonuses carried over from your first playthrough. The bonuses depend on which character you chose to lead your community, so there's a lot of different options there. Now, I don't know whether or not it's cumulative. As I've said, I've not actually completed a game yet, because the other thing about this game is it's actually quite tense. There is a lot of tension when you're playing this game. Because your character can die permanently and can become infected with the blood plague, which may not kill them outright, but if you can't heal them in time, one of the other characters in your community might have to go and put this person down because they're about to turn into a zombie. That makes you cautious in your approach. The other thing as well is that because you've only got a backpack with a certain number of carry slots in it, you have to be quite careful about how you approach looting and gathering items. If you get vehicles, which you can use the trunk space in them to carry more items, particularly heavy items. So you've got to be quite careful in how you approach looting items and picking stuff up. And also, if you alert like a swarm of zombies, like if there's a lot of zombies in an area, they can overrun you pretty quickly. I was quite surprised to see just how quickly I had to say goodbye to one of my characters because, well, they got eaten. So you know that's a little that's a bit different, and it adds some consideration into how you go about interacting with the environment in this game, which is not something that I had really had to think about from any kind of previous zombie games that I've played. You know, normally you're a bit of a sort of a superhero, gun-toting superhero, and zombies fall before you like freshly mown wheat. But yeah, not this time. So that was pretty interesting. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. One thing that I did notice is that graphically the game is probably not as polished as some other recent releases. It's not quite up there with your God of Wars, your Horizon Zero Dawns. It's not bad. It's a pretty game, and you know, they've done a lot of work in the atmospherics to make it sort of to make it a bit more important when you are playing at night, for example. You know, there's a lot of background noise and ambience, and you know, it just sort of it plays well together. And I must also admit that for me the controls were a little bit of a problem, because I found that it didn't quite do what I wanted to do some of the time. So if I was sprinting towards an exit and there was a door to my left, sometimes I would just sprint through the door, and when you do that it's very loud, and that means that you will also alert many zombies in the area, which is how things like getting swarmed and getting eaten happens. So unexpected consequences from just sort of carrying out some basic controls. So that's definitely something I think that they could work on. They've already applied a few patches to the game since I got my hands on it, and it's looking a bit better already in terms of controls and those controls sticking. So I do think it's definitely something that they are listening to and improving. Looks clear. Now, cooperative. One of the big draw cards for this game is that it is up to a 4-player cooperative. The important thing to bear in mind when you're doing this is that you will only be aiding the host player's community when you do this. Now, that's not necessarily a problem, but if you are focused on developing your community and seeing how that goes together, then you must be willing to sacrifice that for a while to go and help out a friend. Again, doesn't really matter for some people, but for other people it will be quite an important distinction. When you are playing in someone else's game, you can still build influence, and but anything that you take from like your locker or your sort of your storage spaces will come from your instance. So really you are sacrificing your community's materials to aid other people. It's quite a good way of ensuring that we don't get sort of significant abuses of other people's lockers and storage items. So you can't just turn up at your mate's instance, take all of his ammo and then bugger off back to yours, for example, which is something I would totally do. But yeah, you just got to be aware of that before you get stuck in. Playing in multiplayer, quite a lot of fun, I must admit. It's it is, you know, it's like anything. The game is improved by being able to play with your friends. So that's really cool, and it's good to see. And again, you know, it's the accessibility of this game, the ways in which it has been made available to players both on PC and on Xbox, means that, you know, you could probably quite easily convince 2 or 3 of your mates to spend that $15 for a month's worth of entertainment from this. So yeah, the game itself is actually relatively cheap, which I think is a bonus. You know, it's only $50 New Zealand for the basic edition. I think it's 70 New Zealand dollars for the ultimate edition as well. And of course, if you're already subscribed to the Xbox Game Pass, then you will have access to it when it goes live on the 22nd of May. Overall, I have really enjoyed my time on this game so far. It's not been perfect. There have been some moments where I have been a little bit miffed at either the controls or failing to spot a horde of zombies, but ultimately, if you treat this game with a bit of respect and you're careful about it, then you will have a good survival zombie, you know, looting experience, which does incentivize you to come back to it and play it time and time again with your friends. So this one is probably going to be making it into our regular Monday night streams or Sunday night streams, which hopefully you should be able to get in on that. Don't forget to check us out on Twitch TV. And this game, as a standalone title, I am going to give this one a 7.3 out of 10. As I said, I think it's a good experience. It is not graphically the strongest game that I've seen this year, and a little bit of work on the controls and perhaps some optimization on the multiplayer would have bumped it up a little bit further. But it's still a good, enjoyable experience that, if you are playing with your friends, is made infinitely better. So, thanks very much for checking out this review video. Stay here with The Empire to see more technology and video game reviews. And of course, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, all those places. Thanks very much. This was Dave.
You got a plague, Muerto, here.